The ladder you're climbing might be leading up the wrong wall. That's the title that we will explore in this video. Let's dive in. So, I once heard a quote by someone called Thomas Carlyle. I forgot to research who this person was. I saw it in a book. I took the note down. Yeah, it is what it is. I'm only human. And the quote is, "You go as far as you can see. When you get there, you'll be able to see further." And what that means is that you will set yourself some kind of a goal, and like climbing a mountain, for example, and you pursue it, and when you get there to your destination or to the top of your mountain, you will then be able to see further. You'll then be able to see what the next goal is, what the next target is. That's what the concept is. In many ways, this is Jacob's ladder. And Jacob's ladder is a concept in Genesis. The way that I interpret the concept is through Jordan Peterson's teaching, and Jordan Peterson explains Jacob's ladder as, paraphrased of course, my understanding of what he teaches is that humans find joy and fulfillment in the progression towards a meaningful goal, and when we achieve that goal we lose motivation, and then we kind of feel lost. You know, you look at it with sports people who, you know, they become stars of what they do, and then they retire, and then what's next for them? You know, that's it kind of thing. So therefore the concept of Jacob's ladder is that we need an ever expanding series of goals that are never ending, in the infinite pursuit of something greater than ourselves, transcendent, something we can never achieve. So that whenever we achieve a first goal that we focus all our energy, attention, time and resources on achieving, immediately afterwards the next goal becomes apparent, which is bigger, carries more responsibility, carries more weight, is harder to do, and then we focus on pursuing that goal, and then when we achieve that we can see the next goal, which is even bigger, and then so on and so forth. So essentially we are on an infinite quest towards an impossible goal to achieve, and we pursue it until the day that we die. Now, for me personally, that is true. That explanation and the concept of Jacob's ladder kind of explains the story of my life in many ways, in goals and things I've achieved, with one thing missing. And that is, for me personally, let's take three examples that spring to mind. So the first would be with work, money, finances kind of thing. So for me, I had a financial target that I wanted to achieve. It's something that I was told was how much I should be aiming to make as a copywriter, and I focused all my attention on that, and then one day I achieved it, and then that was it. It was great for a short while, and a short while is much shorter than you might expect. And then I set myself the next goal, which was more than double what my previous target was, which led to catastrophe for me. We'll explore more in a moment. The second example is with travel, and it's something so me and my wife Tattoo, we travelled for maybe 3 years, 4 years maybe, and we travelled around the world as digital nomads, and we would always come up with an adventure of where we want to go, a destination we wanted to go to, and whenever we would, like for example, once we travelled across Europe from I think we started in Bulgaria, in Sofia, because it was the easiest flight we could get to, and then we went from Bulgaria across into Macedonia and the Balkans, and went to all the countries there, and then through Central Europe, and then into Romania, with the destination being Moldova. And what we found was that we just loved the journey of going from one place to the next, to the next, to the next. You know, instead of flying, you're catching buses and trains, and well, you go from one place and get the bus and then stay in the next city or the next town for 5 days or a week, and then explore that area, and then you go on to the next place and the next place. And it's sort of the slow incremental progress towards the final destination, which in this case was a physical destination. We found the meaning and fun and the enjoyment in the journey towards the destination. When we achieve the destination, it's kind of what's next, what's next, what's next. And so naturally then you come up with where you want to go to next and how you want to go to next. And then you set yourself milestones on how many countries you want to visit and all of these things. That's the second example. The lesson here is that we found more joy and fulfillment in the journey towards our physical destination than actually getting to the final destination. And then the third example for me is with running. And it was, to start off with, I wanted to do a marathon. And so that dominated everything I did. And then I did a marathon. And it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And then I immediately signed up to do another one later in the year. And then I did that. And then I immediately signed up for another one. And then I did that. And then I immediately signed up for another one. And I did that. And then all of a sudden, after doing 4 marathons, that it was no longer exciting or interesting. I'd achieved my goal, and I no longer found the same level of motivation or meaning in pursuing the next goal, which in this case was doing another marathon, but maybe at a slightly faster time. I just didn't find the enjoyment, which is then when I stepped into ultra marathon distances, and then it was the same. I set myself a target of doing a 100-kilometer run, and I focused on that for years. And then one day I did it, and it felt great for a day, and then it went. And then I'm thinking, what's next? This is common. I've worked with a running coach before, Joe Corsione of the Everyday Ultra podcast. If anyone runs, check him out, and he's a fantastic coach. And he always said that this is what he does, and what he taught his athletes was that if you've got your main race that you want to do, make sure that you always have at least one, ideally 2, like what he does, races signed up for afterwards or planning to do, because when you achieve your goal, after all the training you put in, you're going to feel a bit depressed, and you won't be able to find, you're going to feel a bit lost because the training stops, you've got no goal to work towards. Again, the point here being that the joy and the meaning is found in working towards a meaningful goal. And you need to have a series of more meaningful goals beyond what you're trying to achieve, so you can immediately start progressing towards the next one, which is the concept of Jacob's ladder. So 3 examples there of how that directly resonates and provides the answer to my life. And so there is the difference here, because what I found in all 3 examples that I did is that I achieved a financial goal and immediately set myself a goal 2.5 times or 3 times higher. I can't remember the exact details. More than 2 times. So instantly, what took me my entire life to work towards getting towards, every decision, action, thing that I did on a day-to-day basis was leading towards that goal. I achieved it, and then instantly I want to more than double it or almost triple it, just seems insane, because my achievement was lost in focusing what I have not yet achieved. With the travelling as well, that in many ways pursuing an arbitrary goal of how many countries you want to visit resulted in, towards the end of our travel days, so we travelled from 2016 to early 2020, and then we couldn't travel anymore, and then we had our firstborn son, so travel couldn't become a priority. But towards the later stages, it was more along the lines of looking at a map to find what countries we haven't visited, and how can we get there in the cheapest way possible, and how can we possibly have stopovers in other countries just to tick off more countries we've been to. One example of that was Japan, where we went in winter, and we arrived there jet lagged, winter, it was cold, it was dark, and we were there for 3 nights I think, including the day that we arrived, and we just walked around. We didn't really want to spend too much time outside, cold, dark, couldn't keep our eyes open. I can barely remember anything from Tokyo. It's just a haze, but we got to tick it off our country list, kind of thing. So the point is that because we set ourselves an arbitrary goal of a number of countries we wanted to visit, we were pursuing that meaningless goal at the expense of what we enjoyed doing while we travelled, which I mentioned on the previously, but we enjoyed setting a destination and then travelling overland to get there in a slow way, finding enjoyment in the purpose. So ultimately, the goal that we set ourselves become misaligned with what we actually enjoyed doing. That directly aligns with when I set my financial target, which was 2.5, 3 times more than what I spent my life working towards. All of a sudden, the meaning disappears out of it. And then kind of the same with the running as well, that you achieve goal and then kind of what next? And for me, well, I can share an example of a friend that I have, and he's climbing his own ladder of having an ever-expanding series of goals. So he does 100-kilometer runs, and he does well in them. So then the next one is a 100-mile run, and then he does a few of them, and he finds he can do them, and so he signs up then for a 200-mile run, and then he manages to do that, and then he signs up for a 300-mile run, and then he finishes that, and so he kind of comes back from doing a 300-mile non-stop run, which took him 5 days, I think, and then he comes back and then he finds a 500-kilometer run, and then he signs up for that, and then that's what he's training towards. Every point, a bigger goal. But the question is, in that context, where does it end, kind of thing? It doesn't. It's not going to end, because you're going to reach a point where, well, you've achieved all the things that you can do in your running. What are you going to do next? Are you going to try and go a little bit faster? Well, trying to go a little bit faster isn't the same as finishing something which you thought was impossible for the first time. And both of those 3 examples it's a case of you're setting yourself a series of ever-expanding goals, but your ladder is up the wrong wall, because the destination at the top of your ladder is ultimately meaningless. You're not going to be able to pursue making more money, and the pursuit of increasing revenue by 7% next year, or you look at it and think, oh, this quarter you've made this much money, let's see if next quarter we can make 3% more, and set that as your target, and then you do that every quarter to just justify a paycheck or a salary you take from the company or company growth. You can't really, hitting the number of countries that you travel to is not meaningful at all if you reach a point where you're chasing a target that you set yourself at the expense of the travel experiences that you have. The same with running. That for me, I struggled on some of the longer distance runs because in Malaysia it's hot and humid, and the heat, my body doesn't deal well with heat and humidity, and the recovery time after trying to do long trail runs here, which take more than 24 hours to do, is 2 weeks, out of action for 2 weeks. I can't justify that. So it's sort of, I've hit my peak of where I'm prepared to go, so what next? With my friend that I mentioned, who keeps doing a bit longer and longer distances, that he's going to reach a point, which I think he probably has, of kind of what's next, and then there's nothing meaningful beyond it. This is what happens when you set yourself a series of ever-expanding goals, but you're actually aiming up the wrong wall. So let's contrast that with something else. So this is a direct quote from The Invasive Kingdom from Pastor Philip Lee, who is talking about himself and his wife, who's also a pastor. And this quote here is that they are talking about how they're in their late middle ages at the time of writing the book, and he's talking about how he became a bivocational minister, where he was a practicing doctor with his own small clinic, and he was the senior pastor of leading the church that I attend to. And he said that we are both still looking forward to the future years, knowing that the best is yet to come. So they're referring to the fact that they've hit late middle age, they're approaching them in the mid-60s, I think, at the time of writing the book, maybe late 60s. But they're still excited about what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen next, what they're going to do next. And this is an example of having your ladder up the right wall, because when you have your ladder up the right wall and you set yourselves an ever-expanding series of goals, and you're on that infinite quest, that infinite progression of incremental steps towards your goal, knowing that when you achieve the goal in front of your eyes, that you're going to clearly see further, and you see further, which is the next goal, and then you make your incremental progress towards that next goal, and then when you get there you can see further and further and further into infinity, and you're making that progression on a day-to-day basis until you take your last breath. Well, that's where you find fulfillment, that's where you find joy, that's where you find passion in what you do, that's where you feel energized, that's where you feel motivated. It's what gets you through the tough times, it's what gets you up in the morning, and that's how it is. That's the difference between having your ladder up the right wall and up the wrong wall. And so the question is, how do you know if the ladder is up the right wall? Well, the simple answer is, what is the ultimate goal? What is the ultimate destination? If your ultimate destination is the pursuit of money, your ladder is up the wrong wall. If your ultimate destination is to achieve some kind of arbitrary goal for your own self-interest, for your own benefit, which naturally on the subconscious level is going to be tied to pride in many ways, then your ladder is climbing up the wrong wall. So for me, when it was travelling to different countries, is that I knew 2 people that had travelled at the time to 136 countries, and I thought, oh, I want to be like them. Well, why? Why did I want to be like them? So I could say I've been to that many countries. Well, who benefits from that? The only person that benefits from me saying I've been to, however many countries I've visited, is basically, if I'm being honest, it's to show off. And the reason you show off is because of pride. The reason I pursue the goals that other people pursued is because of envy. I want to achieve what they achieved. Same with running. That in a previous video I mentioned how ultra running is inherently selfish, focused on self, and there's nothing wrong with having hobbies and things that benefit you. But if I have for me personally, pursuing a hobby which is 100% self-directed and self-interest, I understand that I'm not going to have any meaning for it, and I'm going to eventually reach a point where there is no what's next. And when you realise that there is no what's next, that's when things start to fall apart. It's kind of like you look at someone that they get into the corporate world, they finish university, they get a job in some big company, and then they quickly become promoted to manager, and then they quickly start climbing up their career ladder. And everything that they do is dominated on the pursuit of hitting their goals, especially for males, because it's more of a masculine tendency to do this. And they are competitive, they're competing against people around them, and they probably find the whole process fun. It's like a game to them. And they are working 60-hour weeks. They are a slave to the boss in the company they work to. They're beholden to them because they know that, hey, if I don't sacrifice my weekend to do this, someone else will, and they're going to get the brownie points in the pursuit of the higher level on the ladder. They sacrifice time with the wife, with the kids. They grow apart from their family, and then one day they get overlooked for a promotion. Someone younger, someone better than them got the promotion, and then they have the realization that they've hit the glass ceiling in what they can do. They're not going to progress any further in the company. They can either remain in the position they're in and wait until their retirement, not having the pursuit of a goal anymore, or they have to change something. And then over a period of time, the realization kicks in that they've wasted their life in the pursuit of a goal which is completely meaningless. They've sacrificed so many things that are important to them. Watching the kids grow up, spending time with the kids when they're still young, the relationship with the wife or husband if it's female professionals, friendships, hobbies, all of these things. And then they realise that they've sacrificed all of the things that are most important in order to pursue a company goal, and they can achieve nothing else. And that's what leads to the midlife crisis in many cases. Well, that's what happens when your ladder's climbing up the wrong wall. I had the foresight to understand that that's the case with running for me and with my other goals. And the solution that I found is so that you can be in your late middle ages and looking forward to your future years, knowing that the best is still to come. The ultimate, most meaningful goal that you can pursue would be God. It would be to identify your unique purpose and calling in life and then pursue that. It's the pursuit of being Christ-like in everything that you do, in your day-to-day decisions, in order to turn the mundane into extraordinary, and the ordinary into extraordinary, and the mundane into acts of worship. And you do this by the pursuit of excellence in your ability in what you do. It's the pursuit of extravagant love. How can you be the biggest blessing to as many people as possible? It's the pursuit of having integrity in what you do, humble service to others. And when you do that in the day-to-day actions that you do, and then you anchor your vision of what you want to achieve, the big picture, your big picture goal in God, in Jesus, which is infinite, eternal, perfect, that is the unattainable goal that you cannot achieve. And when you make meaningful progress on a day-to-day basis, every time you get to the next horizon, you're going to clearly see the next destination, because you've got an infinite vision which you tie down into the day-to-day, my decision-to-decision actions. You tie the big picture that's it's intangible, you can't define exactly what it is, down to your moment-to-moment actions of becoming Christ-like, And when you do that, everything you do becomes an act of worship. Everything you do is a way that pleases God, which gives meaning to everything that you do. And whenever you achieve a goal, the next goal will materialize afterwards. And you will know that you're pursuing something intrinsically meaning. And you know here that your ladder's up the right wall because it's rooted in God. And that's all. See you in the next video.